Hello and welcome to Media Studies here at Holy Cross, and to help you get through this introduction to Media Studies there should be a book accompanying the slides that you're going to have a look at in this little film and the films during the next couple of weeks. And that will help you to take notes and use these notes for revision purposes later on in the course. So this is going to serve as an introduction to Media Studies. And in particular, we're going to look at something called technical and visual codes. More about that in a moment. Okay, now during the course, there are a list of skills that you will need to develop. These won't mean much to you now, but we will be working on these and drawing attention to them throughout the course. So the things that are highlighted in yellow, such as knowledge and understanding and contexts, and analysis and evaluation, judgments and conclusions, all of those things are key words that we have to start to understand as we work through the media, because ultimately when you are marked on this, when your work is assessed, they're the things that the examiners will be looking for, but that's in a long time, that's not yet. Okay, now we're going to start off by looking at some key concepts to media studies, because we've got to work out, first of all, what is media studies, what is it about, what sort of things should we be looking for with media studies. So over the next sort of 10 minutes or so, hopefully that will become a little bit clearer. To start us off with this, we're going to watch a video from another teacher, and this teacher will talk about key concepts. So you can see on page 3 in your book, there's areas, so there's something called media language, there's something called representation, there's also audience, and then industry, sometimes called institution. What are these things? This is a way in which we can understand, start to understand what media studies is. So we're going to watch a video, and when we watch that, I want you to reflect on it a bit and just make a few notes on that.
Hi everyone, my name is Mr. Hunter, and one of the questions I get asked all the time is
Okay, so it's now time just to have a little reflection on this. What did you get from that? What ideas did you get? What concepts are you thinking about? So how should we approach it? So if you can spend a few minutes just noting this down, and what did you get for each one of these areas? Hopefully, having watched that short film and made some notes, you're coming up with some concepts that are similar to these. If you haven't got exactly the same words, it doesn't matter. We're just starting to think about this question now. What is media studies? This is something you're going to be studying for the next 2 years. So media studies, first of all, media language. Well, a language is something that is spoken or written down and we understand, and media is the same, but instead of just looking at written words, or spoken words, we can also look at other things as well. So we've got to look at what we call technical codes. This is all to do with the camera. How close is the camera? How far away is it? Is it a low angle? Is it a high angle? Is the camera moving? All of these things make different, create different meanings. The visual codes, just what somebody's wearing, matter, the body language, the facial expression. And also when we get into it, we'll be looking at audio codes to do with sound, diegetic sound and non-diegetic sound. What is the difference between those things? Representation, a key area that we're going to look at. And very generally speaking, this is about a view created about people, about groups of people, about places, how Manchester represented within the media and things like that, or Bury. It could be about the representation of issues, so how is issues connected to Black Lives Matter represented? And is the media biased? Is it mediated? Who decides what we get in the media? In addition to that, we've got audience, and we've got to think about how the audience are targeted, and the media try to attract an audience, but also why do audiences use the media? What do they get out of it? What's in it for us? Why do we use social media? What information do we get from it? Do we form a community with other people? What's going on? There must be something in it for us, or we wouldn't use it. And of course, the industry is to do with who makes the media, who creates the media, who are the big organisations. But of course, now we can all be media creators. We can all have our own YouTube site. We can all create little films and publish them to a worldwide audience if we want. To help you with media studies and develop some of these things further, you will be issued with a media theory booklet, and within it there's a range of theories that we're going to look at throughout the course, so you don't have to take these on board all at once, but these will help us, and really what we're trying to do is understand the ideas behind each of these theories. We don't necessarily even have to remember the names of the theorists, but what are the ideas? They're the important things that will help us understand the media more and help us approach the media in the way that we need to. Okay, so what we do in media studies is we study something called texts, media text. So if you're doing English, you might think a text is a written piece of work, a book or poem or something like that. In media, we study what we call media texts. And really, roughly speaking, this is anything created by a media producer for an audience. And there's all sorts of different things we could look at. So it could be magazines, it could be computer games, it could be a film, it could be a online blogger or vlogger. It could be a tweet. A single tweet is a media text. Donald Trump uses a lot of different tweets, so we can analyze those, we can look at those. It could be music video. There's a whole range of things that we can consider to be media text. As long as they're created by a media organization for an audience, then it's up for us to study it. It's up for grabs to be studied. So what other media texts are there? We could maybe think about things like television programs, newspapers, film trailers, print adverts, social media blogs, radio programs, magazines, and other things that I've failed to put on the list, but they're the sort of things we look at. So we start with the text, we analyze text, we explore text, so we study these things in a serious way, in an academic way, in a way that you would, if you're doing English, explore a novel. So we analyze it, we look at the meaning from it, we look at the why it's been created, we look at the context of the society in which it was created, and so on. Okay, now here, this is just to give you some idea of what the course will involve. And these are set texts that we have to study on the course, so we will be working through these. However, we will be looking at other things as well, but as a bottom line, we've got to understand these things, and we've got to be able to sort of have knowledge of these when we eventually, in 2 years' time or so, go into the exam. So there's a section on advertising where we're looking at print advertising, but this is historical with a 1950s Tide advert. There's also a 1960s film poster called Kiss of the Vampire, and then it's brought up to date with a moving image advert for WaterAid. We also look at newspapers and the set text for newspapers. We've got to understand politically where a newspaper is coming from, what point of view do they project, and so on. There's a section on film marketing, and the two key texts that we do is a film called Black Panther, and that's a mainstream big budget text. But we also study a film called I, Daniel Blake as well, and look at how that was marketed, which is a British independent film made by a director, some of you may know, called Ken Loach. There are topics also on computer games. We look at Assassin's Creed in particular, along with radio. Okay, in addition to that, we have these texts here. So there's music video with Vance Joy's Riptide and Beyonce's Formation. And then it moves into a different part of the exam. All the previous texts I've mentioned are in the sort of first part of the exam, the first exam rather. There's two exams at the end of this. So they're the exam 1, the exam 2. We look at alternative mainstream magazines, two key texts, Woman's Realm and Hook. We also look at something called Global Television, two key texts, The Bridge, which is a Scandinavian drama, police drama, and we look at that alongside a British television drama called Life on Mars. And we also look at online media, looking at Zoella and how she's developed her persona, if you like, in terms of starting with blogs and moving on. And we also look at a magazine an online magazine called Attitude. So they're the key texts that we need to know. But as I say, we will be looking at a range of other things throughout the course and loads of different texts. But the bottom line is we've got to have knowledge of these particular things. In addition to the exams, so the exams are sort of worth 35% of the overall grade each. There's component 1, exam 1, and component 2, exam 2. We've just looked at the text for those. But there's also coursework. So for media studies, you have to create some coursework. And this is something called a cross-media production. And this involves a usually sort of print media, but it changes year by year, so we're not exactly sure what it's going to be for yourselves. On here we can see a selection of stuff from magazine cover to DVD cover and a magazine article. Last year students were sort of creating what were called independent magazines for an independent publisher. So quite a lot of people did fashion magazines, but you could do all sorts of things. Anything's up for grabs. There's a lot of travel magazines, sports magazines, and things like that. So really sort of, depends what your interests are. This was an independent sort of fashion magazine, looking at sort of slow fashion and sort of retro fashion and things like that. And there's a front page, as you can see on the left hand side, as well as a contents page that students had to make. This was an article, double page spread students had to put together. So that was the magazine bit of it, but it was a cross-media production, and students had to also create a website that was, part of the magazine brand. So this was the website that was created, and we can see it's got a range of images on there. There'll be particular sort of images that you have to do. Now, one thing you might want to bear in mind, don't worry, you don't have to be in your own work. You can get other people to be in it. So people usually get their friends and sort of family involved and take photographs of them. So if you're thinking, oh, I don't want to be in front of the camera, just can't do that, then that's fine, you don't have to. Now for the website, so you learn to build a website. I'll show you how to do that. There's a range of images on there. You have to include a written article as well as some audio visual footage. But again, you'll be sort of guided how to do this and shown how to do this. You're not just left to do this on your own. So don't worry about it. Everybody produces good work if you work hard at this particular area of the course. Okay, and now a more in-depth look at how we actually study the media. So previously, I've tried to provide you with a guide as to how we generally sort of are going to look at the media. And now we're going to try to get into this in more detail. So specifically, what do we have to do? Okay, now we're going to focus part of this on one of the set texts, just an introduction to that. And this is going to be a music video called Formation from well-known artist Beyonce. And we're going to try to use that as a way in, but before we get there, we're going to look at a couple of other texts. So this will be typical of how we approach particular music texts, particular media texts. Okay, now what we're going to start off with is by trying to think about the media language. So this involves three distinct areas: technical codes, which is all about the camera and how the camera works and moves; visual codes, so if we ignore the camera, what else can we see, what are people wearing, what are the facial expression, what setting are they in, and so on. And then there's also audio codes, which fall into two categories: the diegetic and the non-diegetic, but we'll do more on these. Okay, now starting off with some technical codes. Now these are shot types, and when we watch the media, whether it's still image stuff, that means things like print media, or moving image, so on television or on YouTube, or moving image adverts and so on, each text will be made up of photographic content, and each of those photographs really can be broken down into a type of shot. I hope in your books this is clear, or you can see it on the screen, but you can see each of these different shots frame a person or part of a person in a particular way, and each one has got a name. So for example, if we look at the third one down on the left hand side, with the head and shoulders shot, this is known as a close-up shot and is a frequently used shot within the media. As we move down the body to about the chest upwards, we've got a medium close-up, so really that's between a medium shot and a close-up. A middle or medium shot, so from the waist upwards we have a medium shot, and then a full shot will be a long shot. Okay, and there is different terminology for this, so some people call a long shot a full shot, but we'll stick to the term long shot, and so on. There's other things as well, so over the shoulder shot when people are in conversation, a tilted frame when maybe somebody's not seeing something in a clear way or whatever. There's also the angle of the shot, so where can the camera be placed? Is it low down? Is it high up above the subject, such as in a high angle shot? Okay, so these things you need to learn, you need to be able to understand these, you need to think about why they're used and what meaning they are actually creating. To reinforce this more, we're now going to have a look at another little film, which shot sizes. As I say, in this, this uses the term full shot rather than long shot. We will be using the terminology of the long shot, so it's for American audience, so slightly different the way they call things in America, but it's quite an interesting little thing to have a look at. So have a look at this, try to recognise the different types of shots and start to think through why you think they've been used. Hopefully now you're beginning to recognise some of these names, such as the close-up or the medium shot, and start to recognise those. And really we need to work on that. That's the key thing, the first thing as we get into the media language. We're working on these. Can we recognise these different types of shots? from a moving image text. And then we've got to think through, well, why have they used these things? Why are these shots used at different times? The first thing is to recognize them and really put a label to them. So is it a long shot? Is it a close-up? Is it a low-angle shot? And so on. So we're going to develop those skills a little bit more now by looking at a moving image advert and trying to look at the shot types in it. And this is an advert called This Girl Can. It was created by an organisation, a government organisation called Sports England, and the aim of this was to get women into activity. If that was sport, then it was sport, but it could just be any sort of activity, and just make it look like fun. So if you're doing something active, then it is fun. It's worth doing. That was the aim of the advert. So we're going to watch the advert, and I want you to very carefully just think through, can we recognise any of the shot types that we've previously been introduced to in this particular advert?
Many people wonder where my secret lies. I'm not cute or built to suit a fashion model size. When I start to tell them, they think I'm telling lies. But I say, I'm a woman, phenomenally. It's in the reach of my arms, the span of my hips, the stride of my step, the curl of my lips. It's the fire in my eyes, the flash of my teeth, the swing in my waist, the joy in my feet. Because I'm a woman. Phenomenally. It ought to make you proud. That's my mother and my grandmothers and my great-grandmothers and your greats and my great-greats and all you women and me.
Amazing.
Many people wonder where my secret lies. I'm not cute or built to suit a fashion model size. When I start to tell them, they think I'm telling lies. But I say, I'm a woman, phenomenally. It's in the reach of my arms, the span of my hips, the stride of my step, the curl of my lips. It's the fire in my eyes, the flash of my teeth, the swing in my waist, the joy in my feet. Because I'm a woman. Phenomenally. It ought to make you proud. That's my mother and my grandmothers and my great-grandmothers and your greats and my great-greats and all you women and me.
Amazing.
I now want to give you the chance to reflect and go over these shot types and see what you can recognise. So in your books, you will be able to work through these images, and I want you to write down what shot type you think it is, and I just want you to start to have a think about why you think it's being used. What information is it giving to the audience? Why have they chosen a long shot instead of a close-up, and so on? Okay, so that will be the next task. And there's 3 pages of this, each with 3 shots on. Yeah, each with 3 shots on. So work through those and start to think this through for yourself. Can you use the terminology to identify the shot type and then say why you think it's being used? So if you can recognize shot type, so close-ups, long shots, low angles, high angles, that sort of thing, that's a brilliant start. But we want to move that on as well and try to develop analytical skills in more detail. So the way you're going to do this is think about the camera, but think that the camera can actually move. And camera movement, it's mainly called, sometimes called camera motion, is something that we've also got to be aware of. So what we're going to do is watch an introductory little video on camera camera movement. I want you to think about this, and I want you to think about how the camera is moving in each one of these shots. So for example, what would a tracking shot be? What would a camera have to do? What would a crane shot be? And so on. So having looked at that, hopefully you've started to understand what the camera's doing a little bit. So a tracking shot is a bit like a dolly shot. Basically the camera moves along, so the whole camera physically moves along. A dolly is a sort of track on which it can move as well. A crane shot is where you can actually move the camera up and down, so the camera physically moves up and down in that sort of movement. A zoom shot, which I'm sure you'll be aware of because most all the phones I'm sure will have a zoom option on there, where you use the focus on the lens of the camera of the phone just to move in and get closer to the subject, but the actual camera doesn't move position at all. It's just the a movement created through the lens on the camera. Random motion, sometimes called handheld camera, is where you can move in any direction, up, down, left, right, as if somebody would move, you know, if you're walking through a busy sort of crowd or whatever, you know, that might be an example of how it works. 360-degree shot, where you move around a subject, we can think about that. And something that I didn't include on the list, but we can think about or should note down, is a panel tilt. So basically for this, you keep the camera on what's called its axis, usually on a tripod, and you move the camera up and down, but it stays fixed to that particular piece of equipment. And the tilt can move up and down, the pan moves from left to right, but the camera isn't moving as a whole, it's just staying fixed on a tripod, usually tripod. Right, so what we're going to do now is, now we've got knowledge of shot types and movement, we're going to try to sort of pick up on those two things together, and we're going to focus on our set text, which of course is Beyonce's formation video. So we're going to have another look at this, and then we're going to come back to this diagram and try to identify some of the key elements within it. Right, so what we're going to do now is, now we've got knowledge of shot types and movement, we're going to try to sort of pick up on those two things together, and we're going to focus on our set text, which of course is Beyonce's formation video. So we're going to have another look at this, and then we're going to come back to this diagram and try to identify some of the key elements within it. So if you can identify camera shot, angle and movement, then you're really making progress. And obviously the thing to do is to be able to write about those things. This is the process of starting to be analytical with the media and draw things out and think about why they're put there and why or how they create meaning. Now to move that on, apart from the camera and what the camera's doing, there's also lots of other things to look at. Now we call these in media studies visual codes, and we can refer to them also as mise-en-scène. Mise-en-scène is a theatrical sort of term from French, meaning placing on the stage, and it means all the other things that we see, such as, you know, what our character's wearing, what their facial expression is, the body language, also where are they in the terms of the settings, what colours are used, what objects do they have, or props as we call them. All those things create meaning as well, and we've got to be able to identify those. So we've got to develop our analytical skills further by identifying the mise-en-scène. Okay, so we're going to watch this short film on mise-en-scène, and then we're going to take this a little bit further. Right, so the task now, having some knowledge of mise-en-scène and all those visual codes, is to identify these and how they work in this video. So we're going to start off again, this opening image really of the video. We might look at the fact that it tells us this is New Orleans police. We might look at the fact that it's a police car. We might ask a question about why Beyonce is actually crouched on top of this police car as well. That's part of the mise-en-scène, it's part of the composition. Why is the flooding there? Why is the devastated houses in the background and it looks like a disaster site? So all of those things are part of the mise-en-scène. And additionally, we can look at these three images, and I want you to be able to annotate those and think about those and think about key things that are important, you think, in terms of the mise-en-scène with those images. And additionally, if we can do these three again, let's see the top one, we see Beyonce, the hat is significant as well, so the mise-en-scène, that's important. The jewellery that she's wearing is important, so we might identify things like that. The fact that she's making a gesture to the camera, which might be considered to be quite offensive, is quite interesting. The second image in the middle, why do we get this sort of aesthetic that's sort of like home movie footage? It's not as vivid as the colours in the other parts of the video. So why have we got that? Why is the car park, something like that, is significant? What about the people there? Do they look together the way they are, you know, placed close to each other in a way? And how you place characters together is referred to as character proxemics. So what's the space between them? How close are they? How far away are they? And again, if we look at the bottom picture, we've got character proxemics in play again. So we've got the police officers raising their arm, and as there's distance from them, we've got the young boy in a hoodie holding his arms open. So all these things are significant. So they're the sort of things we should be noting down at this point. And a quick recap of what we've been looking at. Of course, most recently we've looked at media language, visual codes. We can also call this mise-en-scène, and this includes obviously everything that we can see despite the camera. We ignore the camera on this, but costume, facial expression, settings, colours, body language, gesture and props. And additionally, character proxemics. How close are characters together? Could that mean something they are very close, or are they distant? Are they far apart when we look at the scene? All these things carry meaning. And of course, the visual codes can also be referred to as mise-en-scène or mise-en-scene. It's up to you. In addition to that, in the first part of this session, what we did was look at technical codes. This is all to do with the camera. Where are you placing the camera? Is it close in the close-up? Is it a long shot? Is it a mid shot? Is it high or low angle? Is the camera moving? All these things create meaning. We've got to start recognizing those as media students. And if we can do that, then we're making progress. Fantastic.